Welcome to McGowan's Canvas Miracles. Now, I knew before from doing it, practicing and failing, that soft light would happen. But you can only know it by putting your brush to the canvas and throwing a little paint on. You know, there's an old story about a young man, it's in Japan, I think, and he's saying to his grandfather who's making swords, his grandfather says, you know, life is like making a sword. He says, if you just took a piece of steel, grabbed it the way it was, and you took it out, and you tried to use it as a sword, you know what would happen? The first time you swung that piece of steel, it would snap in half. Because it hasn't learned to be malleable, it hasn't learned to bend, it hasn't learned how to defend itself against what's going to happen in life. So he says, when we make a sword, we melt it down, we bend it, we put it in fire, we take it from hot to cold, we bang it 100 times, we smash it with a hammer, we go over and over. He says we're constantly breaking that sword. Breaking, bending, getting it prepared for life. So no matter what, when it's on the battlefield, no matter what comes against it, it's going to be stronger and strong enough to take it. And that's how life is. Next time you're thinking, oh, I don't want to be exercising or swimming in the morning or whatever it is you're trying to do to get over your sickness or just to be healthy in life, you're bending your steel, you're breaking it, you're making it so that when something does come up in your life that's hard, and it's going to, believe me, you're going to have to deal through death, through sickness, and no human gets away with this stuff. It's just one of those things. You know, you're going to have to deal with hardships and overcoming obstacles of losing a job or not having finances or your car breaking down. But when those times come, you know, or you lose a relative, wouldn't it be nice if you could be the one who's strong enough to get everybody through those situations and be prepared? And how do you do that? By putting it down ahead of time, practicing, learning. So what I'm going to do, grab a smaller brush, something I can maybe control a little better, and maybe at least paint the white part of the house in. Let's get that going. And if your brush is a little dirty and it takes on a little bit of color, so what? Most houses aren't perfectly white. And we'll put in well, this one's got a bit of a pink to it. Well, there's another happy accident, as Bob Ross would say. We'll say that's kind of the orange sky reflecting into the white of the house. Works out perfect. I like it. Just like it was meant to be. We'll throw some of that on. It's actually got a real nice color to it. It's one of those accidents. And sometimes if you're really good and you practice a lot, you can make accidents look amazing. I spent a lot of time painting at markets, and nobody would ever paint live. I could never understand why. And I think it was because they were afraid to fail in front of people. They thought, if I fail, you know, nobody's going to want to buy my painting. They're going to think I'm not the artist, or they're going to see, you know, they felt a little sort of insecure about, you know, how I put this drawing on. They're going to know how I do the work. No, it's not as hard as it seems. Which, all worries. So they talked themselves right out of doing it. So what I did was I thought, okay, when I go there, if I've practiced the painting and I do it over and over enough, I'm going to come up with something that I can do every time. I'll be able to do it. I'll master it, just like Michael Jordan taking the jump shot 1,000 times in his backyard. So I would line up paintings on my desks at home. I'd have 3 or 4 paintings for the market. I'd paint 3 or 4 lighthouses same time, same color, same strip, everything, and I'd have them all lined up. So these were original paints. And then after a while, I got so I could paint a lighthouse with my eyes closed. You know, I was doing an outdoor market and thought that was great. So then I started putting the canvases up live, and because I had done so many of these paintings, it looked supernatural. It looked like this guy can do this with his eyes closed. It's so easy for him. It wasn't easy at all. I spent hundreds of hours painting those paintings over and over and over again until I mastered it so that I could look good. So then the artists would come around and people would come, they say, oh my gosh, this guy is so good, this is incredible. And even artists were buying my work. Why? Practice. Practice makes perfect in everything you do. It doesn't matter what you're working on, work on it. Work on your craft. Everything you do in every aspect of your life, you should be thinking about, how can I make it a little bit better? If I decide to put bushes in front of the house, I can't put something else there. I can't put a boat in front of the house. If I want to have a red roof and I paint a green roof, too late, you know. I can change it, but then that's all time consuming. So think about your decisions, what would work best for you. Think about your failures, what you've tried in the past that worked or didn't work, and work on it step by step. Yeah, well, there's some bushes there. Maybe there's a little bush down here somewhere. Now I'm just blocking it in. See, just throwing some color up here and there. Whatever I get, I get. Now I want to really deepen up that reflection. We got a nice soft sky. I don't want to change that too much. So what I'm going to do is start really highlighting this reflection down in the water. So let's get some bright, bright color going. You see that? Look at how stunning that's starting to look. A little bit of yellow in there. It's amazing. Now you're saying at home, oh, he makes that look so easy. Every time, and people stop me in the store all the time and different coffee shops and everywhere I go, they're like, oh, I was watching you do that painting on TV. You make it look so easy. It is easy. I'm not making it look easy. It actually is easy. You know, go out, take a painting class. Go online, take a painting class. You know, if you don't have money, there's tons of free stuff online. Just go on and take a look at it. Learn to paint. Do something you love to do. And in the process, you'll change your life. One thing about painting, you look at the masters and what they did, and they fought to come up with something new all the time. Their hardest struggle wasn't to paint. The painting part's easy. Michelangelo says God put the painting there, your job is to get the rubble out of the way, which is so true. Look at that, beautiful. I'm going to take some more white. Now, sometimes you got to get brave. Let's take some white. I don't know if anybody's ever seen a palette knife. So this is a little knife. So sometimes when you're painting, paint color is always in the first stroke, and the first time you put it down. Every time you touch it with your brush, which is one of the biggest mistakes my students make, is they're constantly brushing, trying to fix. Every time your brush touches the paint, you're taking away color, depth, intensity. You don't want to do that. Knife sort of takes some of that away. If you grab a palette knife and you scrape some thick snow right over the top, look at that. It becomes very hard to control and brush it away. So you just start throwing some of that snow in, creating some hills. Beautiful intensity. You got all kinds of little breaks of snow all through there. Maybe you want some shadows on this side of your hill. So the sunlight's coming down. So in order to make it look more intense, put a little bit of shadow in. So the darkness in your life, sometimes you're going through misery and depression. That's not misery and depression, that's what's molding you. It's what's preparing you for life. Because life is a series of ups and downs and obstacles, and how you go through each one. It's an old story about the bull. A guy, he's talking to his grandfather. They're out on the farm, and he says, you know, there's cows and there's bulls. And he says, there's a big difference. And he says, what do you mean, Grandpa? He says, well, the cow, there's a big storm coming across the field. It's a big tornado, and it's hurling around, going so fast, and the cow looks up and says, I got to get out of here. Runs like the dickens, like, man, I can't be part of that. Let me out of here. Whereas the bull looks at it and says, no, let's deal with this right now. He runs right straight at the storm. Now, sometimes the bull doesn't make it. Sometimes it's, game over, that's it, doesn't work out. But if the bull does get through the storm, it's done. A few minutes, he's all done. Storm is over. He survived it, goes on to eating grass, enjoying life, meeting up with his mates, having a good day. Whereas the cow spends the rest of its life looking over its shoulder, running, waiting for that storm to catch up. Well, we were working on a couple of paintings. As I said, I like to keep working on things and intent, so I've got a couple on the go, just so I can show you a finished project and the process of going through the steps, so you can see both by the end of the show. And sort of like Joseph when he started out as a boy and he got thrown into caves and lost everything, and then he comes out a man. And you might be going through one of the worst winters in your life, whether it's sickness, whether it's, whatever it might be, financial, mental stress, maybe you're going through an addiction, trying to get over it. And who knows what you're going through except for you. But you can go through it. There's something on the other side of everything. You got to set aside. I had a young man one time. He come into my radio station. He was telling me a story about addiction. He was at the center. And he said, "Rob, I can't tell the story." He says, it's too sad. I said, "Well, just tell me. Never mind about the radio. We'll talk about it together." And he said that I've stolen everything. He says, everything my parents ever gave me, I stole stuff. I robbed them. I robbed my friends. He said, I've done stuff in order just so I could get drugs. He said, you wouldn't believe what I've done. And I said, yeah, you've done things, bad things. So does that mean that's what you're always going to do? Do you want to keep doing bad things? And he said, no, but I know what I'm like, and I slip back in and out, and I get into drugs, and I can't change. I said, well, that's the problem there, is you're telling yourself you can't change right off the bat. I said, you are changing. You're in the center where you've been, cleaned out for however many weeks he was in there, or a month or whatever, and you're at the start. So if you want to become a better person, how do you do that? You got to think each day, what is it I want to become? And I said, you're gifted, you know that? I told him God forges people. He takes and puts you through the worst fire, and it makes you able to help people in the worst of worst situations. What you've done, they're going through, and they can understand your story, they can relate to it. So for you to tell your story, it's believable. And if you become a success story, imagine, that means they have hope. That's what faith is. It's having hope. There's something on the other side, something you can do that's a little different. When I throw stuff onto a canvas, it's not always going to work. Sometimes it's going to be an absolute failure I throw in the corner. But sometimes it's going to work, and sometimes it's going to be incredible. I just never know. But only if I've gone through making the mistakes or doing the canvases and going over and over, only practice it, then I can get to somewhere. If I just say, oh, I can't paint, you'll never paint. So tell yourself you can paint. Then don't compare yourself to the guy beside you or to the Michelangelos of the world. When they come into class, they start out, I can't do a stick figure. I say a line and a circle. Well, now you can do a stick figure with a line, a circle, and a mouth. A line, a circle, a mouth, and two eyes. You can keep working your way up. And okay, so we work from there. We can work on a small technique, build a little sky, a little something in the background. Fail. Say, why did I fail? What went wrong? Get some help. You go to a teacher. You go to a counselor. That's why you're at these sessions. So now that you've gone through it, tell your story on the radio, I asked him, and he did. He told his story, which was an amazing story. He was in a room, and there was a fellow across from him who had passed out, and he wanted some more drugs, so he went over and robbed this fella. And then he got high and he passed out there, and then all of a sudden he woke up and there was police officers around him. And it turned out the fellow wasn't asleep, he had died, he had passed away from the drugs. And so he had robbed his friend, not even knowing he was dead. And he said that's why he was in this place. And he couldn't handle it. He's like, I have no family, no friends. I said, you can't do anything for anybody else, you can only do it for yourself. And work on it for yourself and see what happens. So he told this story on the radio, this amazing story, capture your heart, and I'll tell you about that young man later, but Pastor had heard the story. Pastor Ray, we had actually had him on the show, and he told me he heard this young man's story, and it changed his whole perspective about drug addiction and people and what they go through. And he started helping all the people in his area near his church that were going through these addictions and troubles and getting them off to this same center. And he said it changed his life. He said he just couldn't believe it. So that young man's story ended up saving so many people and helping so many people. And I actually went back to the center, and I had told him about it, and he ended up, he's a missionary now, and he's doing great work all over the place, and has totally changed his life around. But it was only people who've gone through the baptism of fire, you could say, or been forged and smashed as the metal was when the forger was making the sword. The Japanese master was teaching the young man about the sword. It is only in bending and breaking and becoming malleable that you become strong. Everything is on the other side of that. So think about that. When you're going through something, don't think of it as punishment. Think about it as a learning cycle. A place that you've been put to master the secrets of your life, whatever it might be. Because who knows in the future what you're going to hold or what you're going to come across. And each person, we can't save the whole world. The starfish story, the young girl, she's out on the beach and the water's all washed out and there's these starfish along the shore, and she's throwing them in one by one. And an old man comes along and says, "You can't save them all, darling. Just let it go." And she says, "No, but I can save this one. And I can save this one." And slowly but surely she saves one at a time, doing what she can. And that's all we can do in this world, is our part. And each day you're going to come across something. And if you pay attention, just like art, if you start paying attention to the details of your life, something will happen. You'll start to realize that you got this purpose that's driven deep inside of you, that will make you have an ability to do things nobody else can do, because you have experiences that nobody else has had. Whatever circumstance you're going through, you can change. I know you get pulled into this situation, but again, if you get an inch, it's worth it. You get up in the morning and you, this whole week, you say, okay, I'm not going to gamble, or I'm not going to do these drugs. You go 4 days out of the 5, you get them in. The 5th day, you end up back in front of a machine and you gamble again, you make a mistake. Don't say, "Oh, I made a mistake, I'm terrible." Say, "Oh, I got 4 days in out of 5. Try for 6 the next week. Then try for 7. Until you realize, I can do this. I can do this. Start counting in your successes, not your failures. Just like painting. As you come across things, you realize, oh, this is really nice. And shadows make everything better. So this house here, let's show you an example of the house. So right now the house is kind of boring, it's in the background. Watch what happens when I add a little darkness to it. I'm going to darken up one side of the house. Now when I add the shadows in, you know what happens? Light becomes the focus on one side of the house. Now I can see where the light is, where the important parts of the painting are. But without that darkness, I can't see it. Now that I know where the important parts are, if I start adding some bright highlights to the house, all of a sudden it starts coming to life. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? So it's not the light that makes it special, it's the darkness. The darkness that's all around you is a lesson. It's to show you where the light is. See that beautiful light? So, same thing. So once we know that, we start adding shadows into the hills. Now, when we add the light. It becomes beautiful. So important. Now maybe we want to put a tree in. So we're going to grab a thin brush. So the secret to making a thin line is we want to take our paint, make it really thin, almost a watered down version. Just like that. Just keep watering it down, get a puddle of paint, nice black paint. Add a little brown in. So we've got a puddle. Now we don't want a dirty, bulky brush like this. We're going to wipe it out and give ourselves a nice clean bristle to work with. Little fine line. We're going to go into that wet paint. Now when we put a tree line, if we press on the brush, it's going to make a flat line. I'll show you here. So if we press down, we end up with these fat, ugly lines. That's what people do. We don't want to do that. We want to take our paint and we want to put our hand down, sort of like a vise that's holding it up a certain distance off the brush. Look at how thin we can get those lines. Just nice and thin. All in how you, just one simple technique changes everything. Now, I want to put a couple trees in. Look at that. Thin, thin, thin. Beautiful. I was telling you earlier about how that Payne's Gray paint that I use. If you're an artist, make sure you go out and get some of that because it's like a magic paint. Just something about it. We named our class after it. We use it so much. If you go online, you can see some of the Payne's Gray Impressionists. Just regular people who never painted before, now starting to create beautiful things. And take that. If we mix some of that Payne's Gray with a little bit of yellow, we get this beautiful green starting to happen. Look at that. Just a nice. And what happens is because we mixed the Payne's Gray with the orange earlier to make our brown, we're hitting the same tones, the same kinds of colors. So throw a bit into our bushes here. Nice. Maybe we got some grass sort of happening over here. Just breaking through the old snow. Now we really want to get that snow coming down over the edge into the water. And again, back to the darkness. So anytime we want to emphasize something, we have to put dark in. See, by putting the dark along the edges, we start to emphasize where the light is. And painting the shapes of the hills. If you're going to get a hill coming down, paint that hill. Paint it in the shape of a hill. Beautiful. Put a little darkness in, even more dark. Let's really emphasize that house. Lovely. Now we're going to put a little shadow under the roof line. Maybe there's some shadows in the trees. Taking, splash some shadow around on one side. It doesn't take much. And then you can keep working your painting. As you can see, you can add as much fire or color as you want, and then just keep detailing it up. So as we move up, now I can really take a knife and start adding to that snow. So, and you can get these palette knives anywhere online or any local art store. I once painted with a butter knife just so I could see what I could do. I paint a lot with toothbrushes and anything around the house. So now watch what happens when I highlight the white now. Look at how beautiful it starts to look. So now wherever those light edges hit, we get this beautiful sparkling painting starting to appear. But like everything, I had to work up to there. Work up to the place where the highlight could show. Build all the darkness, all the pieces to make the painting have a place to put the light, to emphasize the light. So all the things you're going through in your life, everybody goes through stuff. Think about how it's molding you, how you'll be prepared for things as you go through. Pay attention to how you go through them when you're going through them. If you spend your life trying to figure out each day how you get better, you don't have time to feel sorry for yourself. Sit there and go on about, oh, life is so hard, so terrible. Of course it's hard and terrible. It is for everybody. That's the way it is. Life is never meant to be easy. If somebody tells you life is easy, they're lying to you. It's just not easy. Life is hard. How you deal with hard, that's the difference between one person and another. Not finances. I think people think, oh, if I was rich, everything would be fine. No, lots of rich people are miserable and dying and suffering and going through addiction and going through death and going through sickness. Any rich person who ever gets sick or goes to the end of their life, they all say the same kind of stuff. Same stuff you say whether you're rich or poor. The only thing that matters is your health and how you live. We made mistakes, we can't change that, but we can keep working on getting better so that some parts of our life will be great. And it doesn't matter if you're 50, 60, or you're just starting out. Where you are doesn't matter. What will you do next? You think, oh, it's too late to do anything. Colonel Sanders didn't even start his Kentucky Fried Chicken business till he was in his 60s. So today's show was all about adding darkness in. So our life is all about the malleableness of the darkness that we have within all of us, and how do we use it to emphasize the light. There's an old Marianne Williamson poem, if you get the chance to look it up, that we're all meant to shine like children do. We're all products of God. So not just me, not you, but everybody. So no matter what your darkness is, what you're going through in life, figure out how it's going to make your light shine. We want to thank you for coming into McGowan's Canvas Miracles, and we'll see you after the holidays, so have a great holiday and a great season.